All right. Well, welcome to today's edition of the Elevate to Even Plus speaker series. I am thrilled to have Stacy Huston with us today. I think this is going to be a really fun, dynamic conversation, and you'll see why as soon as she starts talking to us. She's a very exciting and enthusiastic individual. So Stacy, you've had the bio and you can read her full bio, so I'm not going to go through that. And it's also more fun for us, Stacy, for you to kind of tell your story. But I will say a few things about you, and then I'm going to turn things over to Sarima to host the conversation. But Stacy's a native of Southern California. She is the executive director of SixDegrees.org, which is a very, very cool, empowering nonprofit that I'm sure she'll tell us more about. She is also the CEO of Entertain Change, which is another cool venture she's part of. And for her work, she has won an Anthem Award, which maybe you can tell us more about, as well as two Webbies, which are really, really high watermarks in the nonprofit world in terms of demonstrating accomplishment and contributions. And she really is a community builder and lives her life that way. And so, Stacy, welcome to our community. We're thrilled to have you with us. And then to pivot for a second to Sarima, for those of you who may not have been on one of our earlier speaker series shows, Sarima is a two-time alum of Elevate to Even Plus, and she is a rising senior at Emory University in Atlanta. She is majoring in, I always get this wrong, Sarima. I should just say, I don't know if it's media studies or film and television, but she is going to be a big name in the entertainment world. I am absolutely certain. And she is going to host the conversation. As a reminder, she'll be asking Stacy a lot of questions as we go, but you're welcome to type in questions into the chat, and then at the end we will leave plenty of time for people to jump in. So with that, I am going to spotlight Stacy and Sarima and go from there. So Sarima, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Hello again, Stacy. It was lovely talking to you before. And I just kind of want to start right off the bat with questions about your childhood, where you grew up, and how you got your start.
Yeah, sure. And I can just say thank you so much, Andrew. That was a beautiful introduction, and I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for having me. So like he had mentioned, I grew up in Southern California, small town called Redlands, which is in Southern California, not to be confused with Northern California, the Redwoods. Most people get those confused all the time. And I moved to right outside of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, about 11 years ago, which was a major culture shock for this SoCal girl who had really lived very close to her family pretty much my entire life, and felt like a fish out of water for a long time. But Northern Virginia has been really, really good to me. But growing up in Southern California, I went to school from preschool through college. Every single school was within a mile from each other. So pretty small town, pretty tight-knit community, still very close to lots of people there. But it was the type of place where a lot of people grow up there and then they stay close by. Kind of generations of families that live in that area. And I thought my whole life that I would stay there as well. But as I continued to advance in my career, I kind of felt that I wasn't as fulfilled as I thought I should be in some of the opportunities that were there. And so I took a big leap of faith and I moved to the East Coast, which I've been here ever since, and will likely probably stay here forever. So
Awesome. And can you explain your current position as the executive director of Six Degrees?
yeah. So SixDegrees.org is a nonprofit, a public 501c3. And as an executive director there, I'm really overseeing all of the strategy and vision for the organization. So my job is really to cull all of our stakeholders, our board, constituents towards our goal of really empowering individuals and communities through meaningful connections. So we focus a lot on helping to create opportunities for individuals and organizations with employees to connect with one another and with the communities around them. We believe there's a lot of power in connection and in collective impact, lots of different people coming together and doing what seemingly might seem like a small individual task, but when you pull those things together, we can make immense impact together. And so we, in this organization, we plan a lot of different types of events, long-term campaigns, short-term campaigns, really trying to re-envision how local nonprofits can show up in these spaces and get the attention that they so deserve. So as an executive director, I oversee all of our program development and those that manage the programs, reporting to our board and having clear KPIs for the organization and making sure we're staying really focused on our mission and purpose as a nonprofit. In the nonprofit world, executive directors are most importantly the fundraisers. And so overseeing kind of those major goals for fundraising and development for the organization, both with individual major donors, institutional giving. You may have support staff that help you, but that is a major piece of executive director role, and overseeing all of our marketing communications. So obviously that's a big piece of any organization. Every brand is making sure that what you are working on internally is translated externally to those that follow you maybe digitally or through your newsletters or attend conferences that you're at. Really anywhere you can show up, you want to make sure that those things are all aligned. So a very dynamic role. And when you're in a small organization, oftentimes you're not just overseeing it, you're doing it as well.
Right. And it's awesome that you mentioned that, because I was kind of doing like extensive research on 6 Degrees, and I saw you have your YouTube channel. So kind of like that kind of social media that impacts in connecting local nonprofits to kind of like a global scale. So I kind of also wanted to ask, like, how is working from with local nonprofits different from other jobs or other internships that you have worked at previously?
Oh my gosh. The most important piece is for me, it's more fulfilling. I can honestly say that my work is making a difference. That's not to say that you can't do that in the for-profit world, but it is so clearly aligned. And local nonprofits, you can see the impact really up close. It is oftentimes they're under-resourced. So on the other side of like the fulfillment is the immense hard work, right? You see people that are sometimes underpaid, right, for what they're doing, but it's because sometimes nonprofits have limited funding, oftentimes, quite frankly. But they are masters at getting people to see the story, right? And I think that in the nonprofit world, so much is driven by storytelling and helping people to connect to the mission of the organization. And I think many people can say any brand needs to really focus on storytelling, but nonprofits have that ability to really move somebody to action, right? It's different than just kind of purchasing something. It's you're actually inviting them to be a part of something, to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so I think working with local nonprofits, as opposed to my previous career, was really in sales and business development. I didn't start the nonprofit work until about a decade ago when I moved to DC. I'd volunteered and done some activist work growing up, but I, was squarely in sales, marketing, and business development. And so I've taken a lot of that with me into this role. I think oftentimes people think nonprofit fundraising, but you're really selling something, right? You're selling a mission. You're selling that collective impact, like I mentioned before. So those are some of the kind of the key differences and some of the similarities that I've seen.
And when you made the move from California to DC, correct? How did you I guess kind of not only restart, but make connections and network to get to your current position?
I love this question. So I knew one person when I moved here, and we were not even close to the same industry. It was a college buddy. He worked for the Japanese consulate, and that was not a world I was familiar with. So I had to really figure it out. The first job I took was another sales role. The benefit of that is that you have to do networking. It's like it's key to success in the role. And networking was key to my success here and the growth of my career. One of the things that I did when I first moved to this area is I attended a local Chamber of Commerce mixer. And, most chambers of commerce might have like a happy hour or a mixer for members and prospective members at least once a month, especially the more active ones. And so I attended that. I sought out the chairman of the board. And it's important to note that a chamber of commerce is a board that does much of the work typically. And they're looking for people that are interested in supporting as well. And so I said, I'm new here. I love what you're doing. Are there opportunities to get more involved? And they invited me to join the board. They didn't, at the time I was 27. And so I was probably one of the youngest people on the board at that time. I launched an emerging leaders council on the board and started hosting my own events where I invited young professionals to get together. It was something that wasn't being done in this community. Most people were mid to late career in the chamber. And it opened up an entire new facet for them to get in front of these kind of emerging leaders, young professionals, if you will. So getting involved there, I quickly met other nonprofits that I was really passionate about. I started volunteering, eventually joined two more boards. And being on boards was really pivotal in my career journey. It taught me a lot about strategy, budgeting, stakeholder management, diplomacy, having to workshop really critical, sensitive situations, conflict, resolution, and managing lots of different personalities. So I couldn't stress the importance of board development. And I know that there are a lot of organizations that even have young boards or junior boards for those that are earlier in their career and that are interested in kind of supporting. But that was really key. I forced myself to get out there to make connections. I would often set goals, like you can't leave without getting 3 cards. And then once you got those 3 cards, you had to add them on LinkedIn, right? And send a thank you. And I started to be a connector because I was new. I couldn't just be asking for everything. I just started connecting people, so if I met someone that I felt could at all help or support or just be like-minded with someone else that I met the week before, I would say, oh, I met someone recently that does something similar. Do you know so-and-so? I'd love to connect you. And kind of let those relationships go from there. And years later, that has really benefited me a lot.
And was there anyone, whether in the board or even that you connected, that gave you like additional advice that I guess not only allowed you to kind of create your own path in the board, but also kind of supported you in kind of solidifying your ideas, further connections, and increasing your network?
Also a very good question. So I met a lot of people along the way. And I do feel that several key people shared similar, I wouldn't even say it was advice as much as needed affirmations at the time. So being in sales and business development, I was very good at it, but I didn't think that I had any other skill set, right? Like I can sell things, but I didn't go to business school. I hadn't managed people, that sort of thing. I didn't know the power of my own voice. And even though I had ideas, I didn't think that I had the permission to be a strategist, to weigh in on situations that didn't have to do with, my key area of focus in my career. And throughout my life, and especially this part of my journey, I would hear things like, "We really love when you share in the meeting. Oh, you always come up with really great ideas. Oh, we never thought about that before." I got a note once from a mentor of mine that said, "When you're not able to show up, we all notice. Like when you miss a meeting, like it's really evident. We hope you're doing well." My mom was sick for a period of time and I couldn't be there. And that was really affirming to me. That was really validating. It made me believe in myself because others believed in me, and I have taken that with me, and I try to be really intentional about encouraging other people, especially that are more junior or starting out in their career, so that they realize that they're an asset, they have a lot to offer. They don't need to be an expert in any one thing. Our life is about a lot of lived experiences that bring a lot of value to how we show up, right? And how we think about things. And if I wouldn't have started speaking up and sharing my thoughts and just taking that first very nervous step in these board conversations, I don't think I would have been able to get the feedback that I needed to take myself a step further, and to really build on the ideas that I was having. Because quite frankly, most people on the board didn't look like me. They didn't come from California even. So I had a really specific way that I looked at the world and how I showed up in the world. And that was a value, to how we went about our own programmatic work through these organizations.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of kind of like rephrasing the word advice, because obviously you're getting advice and you could take it as much as you want. But I think words of affirmation is kind of reassuring that you already have what you need. You just need to put it out there. So I think that's a great way to think about it. And kind of taking a step back, going to college, like what did you major in, and what additional college experience do you kind of bring to all of your jobs, or what type of skills did you develop at college that you further have built upon throughout your career?
So this is fun. I studied religious studies and creative writing, and I essentially added creative writing because um, my advisors were like, "You probably need a teachable minor." Like I don't know, like unless you're going into the ministry, I don't know. And I wasn't doing that. So essentially, I worked myself through school, and I took a new religious movement class, which was kind of like a first year seminar course that my university offered. I went to a liberal arts school. And I was obsessed. I love history. I love religion. I love what it shares about people and how they think and see the world. And I truly believe that it helped to shape my career in a really successful way, because in sales, a lot of what you're doing is kind of mirroring your clients, and understanding kind of where they start in the world. The faith backgrounds are a big part of that, especially in the business world where you're dealing with all different types of people and you're interacting with all different types of people. So I did that. And I told myself, most of the time when you come out of college, they just want you to know that like you can succeed at a 4-year degree, and like especially with the liberal arts pathway. But one of the things that really helped me, and a skill set that I kind of took from college, is I did like a leadership cohort my freshman year. And they took a group of us to a weekend away where they kind of taught us some different leadership skills. And really, it was a lot of like social, emotional learning, a lot of EQ work, a lot of like getting us to be more aware of how we move through the world, particularly college, and how we can show up in a way that helps our peers, right? And coming out of that, I got really interested in kind of putting a volunteer effort together. And so I put together a campus-wide food drive. I'd never done anything like that before, but I kind of had this bug, like I wanted to do something, to make an impact. And the interesting thing is that, like, I did that, and it was wonderful. It was a lot of work. And I didn't circle back to that for almost a decade later. That type of, just hands-on planning some type of, charitable activity. I participated here and there, but I didn't really spearhead it. And, but it was such a special time because I really got to see, how much harder it is to get people to show up authentically and fully. And even when you do all the things and you're like, you put the posters up and you send out the emails and all your friends are like, yeah, this is amazing, I'm going to help you. And like, no one shows up, and it's so frustrating. It's so, so frustrating, but it helped me build a lot of empathy for those that are in this work day in and day out. Because with 6 degrees, we kind of have very broad pillars, so to speak. But a lot of organizations have like very singular missions. And those that work for those organizations are typically all in on those missions. And I can imagine something that you live and breathe and just feel so deeply in, and showing up in the world with others that you're just trying to get to pay attention to it at all. And it is like slamming your head against a wall. But I say all that to say, when you find your community because you don't need to get everyone's attention, right? You just need to get the right people's attention, those that really can help you make a difference. And that's what I learned in school. Like, not every dorm showed up fully. Not every student body, elected, really helped with this mission. Right. But I didn't need everybody. I needed certain key champions. And I've taken that with me in the work that I do at 6 degrees, where really when we do these initiatives, especially in different markets around the country, I typically try to find one champion, right? One other person that you can really partner with to say, let's do this together. And it really, really helps, just because you need, if nothing else, to keep you guys encouraged as you're doing this work.
Mm-hmm. And then would you say that kind of finding that community and finding people who are 100% in, is that like a big challenge that you have to overcome? Or is there something else, both in your career or in your personal life, if you would like to share a challenge that you had to overcome?
Oh man. So I think that, quite frankly, when you do the storytelling, so I feel like this is they're kind of almost like two separate questions, at least how I'm thinking about it. When you're using storytelling really well, your community finds you, right? We rely a lot on the digital footprint in order to get awareness out, and to get in front of different stakeholders or constituents that really care about the same things that we care about. And a lot of our work is like, we have youth empowerment, equity and justice, sustainable living environments, and what we call emerging crisis. And so things around youth empowerment, that's like a very, I wouldn't say like easy, but it's, most people love young people. Most people understand that young people needing resources is a good thing, and supporting them to have equitable steps in life, that's a good thing, right? It's not as hard to cut across the noise there. Justice and equity, you definitely will have some people that aren't as interested because they may not have the same lived experiences, right? Sustainable living environments, you go even further out. Like, some people don't even, they may not be in an area that's dealing with climate change effects as distinctly as, parts of Florida and Texas and other parts of the world, right? And so on and so forth. So we often find that we have to work a lot harder to kind of get our missions across in that type of way. And sometimes it can be really surprising But what I found, and I think this kind of relates to the second part of your question, is lived experience is what gives us, the ability to be empathetic to something. Because we've experienced it, we understand it. I lost my mother a few years ago. Anybody that has lost a parent, that was kind of in my, immediate network showed up in really authentic ways. Even if it was hard, the most painful thing to do, they did it, right? Some that have never experienced loss like that just couldn't, felt uncomfortable, didn't know where to start, right? And I think so often in this type of work, it's kind of similar, right? If you haven't had a direct experience with something, you're not as moved to show up or to respond to that call to action. And so it's our job to help create the shared memory. So when we have a shared or common memory, then we're able to find that common footing and work together more collectively, right? We're able to move the dial together, right? And get more people to the table, right? Because we're speaking the same language. So that's why storytelling, which is a key part of some of our programming, is really, really important, because when we storytell, we can help create some of those shared memories. We can help people to start see how they connect to this, right? They may not have had that same lived experience, but do they know someone that has? Have they experienced something similar? Does it bring about a feeling that is tapping into something else entirely, but it's, it resembles something to them. So for me, lots of my lived experience has made this work really authentic. It's made this work really important. But I don't get so upset when people don't have that same immediate, like, I'm going to do everything I can to show up and help. It's my job to help get them there.
And talking about lived experience, I think previously in our prior meeting, we discussed how you did a study abroad program. And I kind of wanted to ask you about that experience and how that impacted you.
Everybody should study abroad if they can. And I can recognize that it's really hard and sometimes it's cost prohibitive. I was very lucky. The university I went to allowed me to just pay the same tuition to them, and all the additional costs that came with study abroad was covered. But like I mentioned, every school I ever went to that point was within, 1 square mile of one another. And I actually studied abroad in Europe. I went to Rome and got to travel pretty extensively on the weekends. Every flight or train I could take, I would. And for the first time in my life, I experienced how small we are, both in existence and as a country, as a nation, how small we were in terms of how many people are out there. It's just, it was immense. And so it shifted my paradigm. It shifted my paradigm in believing that I was the most important thing in the world, and everyone should think about the world like I think about the world. It did also create some frustration, right? Because I'd come back and I'd be like, oh my gosh, why does everyone think like this? And it's like, okay, Stacy, like you literally just came out of this bubble, stop, but study abroad is really huge for helping to understand the interconnectedness that many of us have, right? How where we sit in the world. When you're outside of that bubble, you get to see how other people view you in the world, right? Conversations can be a lot more free, and that was really helpful. I think, listen, we're in the Olympics as this is being recorded. This is the Olympics time. I cry every time USA wins gold. Every time I hear our anthem, I'm like I want it to, right? I absolutely adore this country. But there is something very humbling when you go into another country and they start poking at the flaws. And that was one of the first times I realized, oh man, my whole life I've just been told we're the best, we're the greatest, we're the biggest, we're the strongest. Like everyone wants to be us. And it was the first time I heard like, no, I'm good. You guys have some issues. You know what I mean? And I think that's really healthy. And I think that people should spend some time outside of their bubbles as far as you can outside of your bubble, because it teaches you perspective and resiliency.
Right. Kind of expanding your worldview beyond like what you know and kind of understanding other people's experience. Definitely.
Exactly. I'm like, not everybody wants USA to win. Weird. That's weird.
Right. And can I also ask, who were some of like your role models or someone who encouraged you to pursue either, you know, the first part of your career, sales and marketing, and then the second part of your career going into nonprofit?
Oh, that's really good. So my mother was like a huge role model. I would say that she probably most influenced me actually for both. And I'll say it like this. My mom, she became legally blind when I was 8 years old. And from that point on, we really struggled. She was a nurse before that. My father left about that time. So I had a single mom. And although I had a stepdad that was a big part of my life, there, you know, he wasn't there the entire picture of it. And so I really saw this need to be able to support myself no matter what. I couldn't rely on another person or the hope of something lasting forever, however cynical that might sound. And so I was really driven by this need to be successful and to make money and to do all those things. And that is what really led me to sales. I had to pay my way through school. And so I had to work full time. So I started working at a cell phone company. At the time, it was Singular Wireless. I'm going to date myself. Currently AT&T Wireless. But that was kind of why I did that, because I saw how dependent my mother had to be at times in these relationships. And I never wanted that. And so I wanted to be successful. And honestly, the quickest way I saw to be successful is to do sales, right? And as hard as you work is how much money you can make. And that is really what was a driving force early in my career. And similarly, when I made this switch, my mom was a very hospitable, empathetic person. And my whole life, it didn't matter if someone, did her wrong. She was inviting them to Thanksgiving because they didn't have anywhere else to go for the holidays. And that over the course of your life really does shape who you are and how you see things. And so when I had this opportunity to move into this sector and walk away from some of that, security in terms of the financial piece in the beginning, right? I had her full support and belief, because she knew the genuine satisfaction and fulfillment that I would have. And nothing can beat that. Quite frankly, at the point of my life I was in, nothing was more important than being able to say at the end of the day that I absolutely love what I'm doing and I'm happy and I'm making a difference. And it took a while to get there. And I don't want to share this to all say like, hey, if you work in the nonprofit world, you're going to be impoverished. That's not the case. There are so many great opportunities in the nonprofit world to share, to consult, to grow, to support others, to be consultants. There's just a lot of different opportunities. And I have built that over time, and I encourage others to seek those out too. And there's a lot of very healthy, larger nonprofits as well, so that can definitely be well compensated. But my mother was a big proponent for both of them. And when I came into the nonprofit world fully, I met someone along the way. His name was Paul Katz, and he used to be a recording artist agent for Sony. And decided to have a second career where he built a social impact agency. And he really mentored me, spoke those affirmations into me, taught me how to partner, how to build strategic relationships, how to do things with a really nimble team in a really big way. And we're still great friends. And I really am glad that I sought out that relationship. And I've had several mentors over the course of my life. But what I found is that it's important to ask that mentor, make it clear that that's how you see them and that's a relationship you want. Because people do want to pour in to someone else. They definitely want to share their expertise. But you have to make that clear. And then you have to be willing to commit to that relationship, to learn from it, to ask questions, to commit to time, and to do some of the things that they're asking you to do, right? So yeah, Paul has also been a wonderful, wonderful person. He owns an organization called Entertain Impact, actually.
And you just talked about like how to make that connection and how to make clear that you're looking for a mentor, and kind of to get into like the specifics of it, like what would be like an opening question or kind of an opening statement to like guarantee or for someone to recognize that you're looking for a mentor.
Oh, absolutely. Ooh, I love a good role play. It brings me back to my sales days. I would say sharing how much you respect their expertise. I'm assuming if you're asking someone to be a mentor, it's because they have modeled themselves as someone that you want to learn from and grow to be similar in at least one area, right? And I think that's also important to note. They don't have to be this like, I want to be exactly like this person. They might just be really good at strategy. They might be really good at conflict resolution, which is important in any role, learning how to kind of maneuver difficult situations. But I would say letting them know the thing that you've noticed about them that makes them great in whatever area that you want to be mentored in, saying why you want to improve in that area, and then being direct and saying, I would love to have a little bit more of a formal mentoring relationship. And if we could meet once a month and connect and I could ask some questions, that would just be so meaningful for me. I can't imagine a person that's worthy of you even asking that question that would ever say no. I just and it's really because it allows people to share what they are so good at with others, and that's a gift. It really is a gift.
And what if, and this is, there's no ridiculous question. So what if a person is like on the shyer side? Like is it on them to kind of get past that initial awkwardness or that initial nervousness?
Yes, but that's easier said than done, right? So if someone's shy, then maybe instead of like approaching them in person, you craft an email, right? You need help crafting that email. AI, great tool. Go to chat, say, I want to write this email to this person. I want them to be my mentor. They're really good at these things. Can you craft something that would make them agreeable in this? You'll be amazed at what chat can throw back at you, right? And you can say, make it more casual, make it more formal, whatever it is. You can kind of change your voice and you can edit it from there. But there's tools if you're like, I don't even know how to frame an email like that. Like utilize AI. It's a great thing. I use AI every day, all the time, especially for difficult emails sometimes. But no, I would say if you're on the shyer side, try putting in writing, and kind of just hit send and let it go, right? But you're going to have to make that kind of initial request. It's important because the worst thing is that you have one expectation of what you want out of that relationship and they have a different one. Because so often then, it doesn't measure up. It's not what you wanted to get out of it. Um, and and then, you're not utilizing it to the best of its ability.
And I'd like to start opening up for questions from other interns in the chat as well.
I saw some things come through. I see Andrew's question.
Right. And I can read them out. The first question is, do you think you're a natural born connector, go-getter, or did something in your life experience bring this out of you?
I think I'm a natural born connector. I would love to say that like something happened and this thing switched, but um in the birth order, I'm the third child. So often the babies in the family, they just are like, we survive. You know what I mean? Like if you want enough of dinner, you better eat quick, like you better hide something. You have to be pretty resilient. So I joke, but no, I think I'm a natural born connector. I am actually, this is going to sound crazy to some people that are really, really painfully shy, but I am pretty shy. I get very nervous speaking in public. I get networking events, especially where I don't know anybody. It's much different when you're walking with someone you know. If you haven't ever done a networking event, go with someone you know, but do not make that your crutch where you only talk to each other. Like, say you have to separate and have different conversations, get 3 cards each, whatever it is. But for me, that's why I had to set those rules, because if I went in, I would like look at my phone or something. It's very uncomfortable. But I was a pretty natural born connector in terms of like having no problem being like, oh, I want to connect you with so and so, because I felt in that I was bringing value to them. And that felt good, right? That felt like I was being useful. And as far as being a go-getter, yeah, I think that because maybe I was born in a family that, we had limited means. If I wanted to make something happen, I had to do it myself, right? Like I had to figure it out. And I grew up in a pretty affluent community. So lots of my friends, had nice things. And so for me, I was like, I want to be able to achieve and have, and so from very young age, I did, my first job, I was like 15. So I don't even think it was completely legal, if I'm being honest. But like nothing like crazy illegal, but I was working on like a phone operating, like an old dashboard where I had to like pull the cords out, and like there was not always an adult there with me. And I was like answering for like mortuaries and doctors' offices. So I definitely think that small town, own rules, that sort of thing. But no, I think that maybe it's a combination. I think being a third born, you have some natural born tenacity, and then just like lived experience made that kick into kind of full gear.
The next question, also from Andrew, is what prompted the move from working in sales to leading a nonprofit?
So I had a very dear friend who I met through really networking at first. And she said that she knew about this nonprofit that was looking for an executive director, which is SixDegrees.org. And I don't think I even got into this, but Six Degrees is actually founded by Kevin Bacon, who he's an actor. And I thought, listen, the LA girl doesn't move to DC and then end up working for a celebrity. That doesn't make any sense. But she really said, Stacey, you volunteer all the time. You sit on all these boards, like you have nonprofit experience. And I never really looked at it that way. I looked at that as like, that's fun stuff. That's volunteering. That's like, I'm not getting paid for it. But she was like, no, like you've built all of this skill set around this. And then you have the sales, which is essentially fundraising. And so it helped me to see that like all of these different things that I had done throughout my career really culminated in me having the expertise that needed to happen to run a nonprofit. So that was one piece. It was someone actually bringing this opportunity and helping me see myself as good enough, smart enough, you know, uh, having the right professional experience, and then that desire that I had to really do something that was meaningful, really do something that like I said, I could daily walk away and say, like, some days it's hard, but man, it's fulfilling. And as a mom now, I have 2 small children, 2 and 4. As a working parent, like it better be worth it, because if I have to travel and I have to be away from these little ones, it better be because I'm doing something that it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, I also have a question from Juliana. Have you noticed any differences in work culture between the East Coast and the West Coast? That's a good question.
Yes. Juliana, yes. I will say that when I moved here, I I realized the first question that I got from everybody on the East Coast was, what do you do? Where do you work? I mean, every networking event. When I lived in the West Coast, some of my best friends in the whole world, I could not tell you what they do for a living. I couldn't even tell you. I knew one of my friends worked for a hula hoop company, which you would think that I'd ask more questions about that because it's super random. I don't know. I don't know if he was in customer service. I don't know if he like engineered the hula hoops, but like we didn't talk about work. We talked about so many other things. And I think the work culture here on the East Coast is very driven, and that it's not like a good versus bad thing. It's that DC specifically is very transient. People come in to kind of build careers and then oftentimes go back out, right? Whether they're starting a nonprofit, they're coming here for public policy, government, military, lots of different things like that. It's the fastest, I think the largest young professional area in the entire country, Washington, DC, Arlington specifically. So like you just have a lot of people that are coming and building a career and then moving elsewhere. So they're networking. They're like professional networkers here. And California was just like a whole nother world. And like I said, not good, not bad, but just totally different.
Oh, and Jessica was gonna ask the same question. Yeah, that was a really good question. Andrew's also asking, did you have to overcome being starstruck when you started working with Kevin Bacon? And another question, can you tell us about entertain change?
Absolutely. Yes. So the first interview I had with Kevin was on Skype. And I remember sitting on the computer waiting for it to like ring or whatever. And it said Kevin Bacon calling. And I remember being like, oh my God, I thought it would be like some like avatar or some like, you know what I mean? Like fake name or something. And it wasn't. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I almost wanted to take a picture, like pull up my phone and be like, hey, didn't do that because thank God, right? And then I immediately talked to him. He's like very normal, like any person and super easy to get along with. But when I got the job, my very first day on the job was my birthday, which is July 23rd. And I picked him up from a hotel, him and his brother, to do a charity event. And I was gonna I thought they were gonna like follow me, and he was like, I'm just gonna hop in your car. And I had this like little Prius. Thank God I had like vacuumed it and like cleaned it because I was like, that would be horrifying. But I immediately started thinking, like, do I have enough insurance? Like, what if something happens? Like, I had Kevin Bacon's in the car. What if I hurt him? You know what I mean? Like, he must be insured, like, especially for like his face or something. I don't know. But after the first, I would say, year of working with him, I kind of did this, like what I call baptism by fire. I planned a lot of events for us to do a bunch of what we called pop-ups at the time, which was we would go to these different communities across the country, and Kevin would do kind of these surprise pop-ups for their volunteers or for their staff or their constituents. And I really got to know him really well. And now he's like family. It did take about a year. But it is very fun to see now, like when people engage with him for the first time, how different they become, like, how nervous they get. And I'm like, I could never imagine, you know what I mean? Like I was probably the same exact way. And then Entertain Change is a social impact agency where we connect what we call purpose and profit. So a lot of the work that I do there is helping companies, those in entertainment, they make movie, film projects, and really everyone in between, help create strategic campaigns and think about how they look at social impact work and social change work through the lens of their industry. And so often, corporate social responsibility or some type of social impact initiative is an afterthought. And so that's a nice to have. But so many studies and research are showing that organizations that really wear social change like on their sleeve, they actually do better financially. Their employees are happier, they have less turnover, higher retention. And so my goal for Entertain Change is really to help social impact work to be something that is ingrained in every single organization, that it is something that we think about when we build companies to ensure that cultures are healthy, that these companies are not just taking from communities, but thinking about how they can serve those that they, are present around. And then I do a lot of speaking. So I recently just did actually my first TEDx talk, and that'll be coming out in September, and I'm very excited about that. But it's really about community building, how we come together. And so doing some speaking through Entertain Change as well.
Our other question is from Barry. He said, what are common myths about nonprofits that your organization has tackled? That's also a good question.
Oh man, that is a really good question, Barry. So I would say one of the most common myths that I've seen, and I don't even know if it is a myth, but it's just something that's not like talked about, is we center the person with a lived experience, right? And so many organizations, I think, are very well-meaning, right? But when you look at sometimes their staff, their leadership, their board, advisors even, they don't have a lot of people that have the same lived experience as those that they're serving, right? And so one of the common myths is that like all philanthropy is good, all nonprofit work is good. It's all kind of, chipping away at something. I actually don't believe that. I believe that some can actually be quite harmful when they're not centering certain voices. Sometimes it's hard, right? Sometimes they're serving markets where there aren't a lot of people that they can pull from, but there's always people that they can bring in, right, to advise and support and have a seat at the table when you're talking about programmatic work and those sorts of things. Another, common myth that I have seen up close is that, these organizations, one of the things that I found recently is we have some of these organizations that are big global nonprofits that will take a bunch of donated goods, right? Think about like your largest brand and retail partners, right? And then they're considered like the largest nonprofits in the world because they're receiving all these goods, right? And then they essentially turn around and resell them at a fraction of the cost, but they're reselling donated goods, right? And so that's for me another example of like, I don't know if that's good philanthropy. I also don't know if people like, hearing that, but that's not my purpose in this world isn't to just say what is people are going to like. It's to speak truth, and oftentimes truth to power is uncomfortable. But I think that those are some of the biggest myths, is that you need these like larger organizations to kind of be the middleman, right? Instead of just supporting organizations directly, or having people at the local level receive the resources they need, or, well, there's not enough intelligence, expertise, wherewithal at the community level. So we have to bring in a lot of these bigger organizations elsewhere to help those that live there. I don't believe that. I believe that people know their communities, people know what they need. You just need to give them the same type of equitable resources, because that's the thing that they don't have, right? They have intelligence, they understand the community, they understand the land, the geography, all of those things better than anyone else. So I think it's how we resource is the most critical piece. I hope that answered your question, Barry.
I think it. And I also had a question of kind of like, is it that, because I know some nonprofit organizations, they have like a face for their organization. So is it that more you're focusing on like the community, someone from the community, someone who has that experience is representing whichever specific part of the program for the community?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we do it a couple different ways, but oftentimes we have like an internal champion that we call like the change maker on the ground. So when we are building, we have different programs. One is building kits, where we build these essential resource kits and give them to the nonprofits to hand to their constituents. And we never say, tell them it's from 6 Degrees, right? It's these are yours, these are resourced from you. Use them as a trust building exercise so that you can divert your resources to your most critical programmatic needs, right? Now, oftentimes those organizations have incredible people that are working, that are running the programs, that are leading the programs. And so we always take that opportunity to tell a story about them, right? And kind of raise their profile, and ask them, like, what makes you do this work? Why do you make this choice? And that's really our second program. We call it Cause Evolve. And that's really our social impact production. So we have a podcast, we do some short form content, we've done music videos, we've done televised music concerts on CBS. We've kind of run the gamut of things that we have capability to do, but it's really about telling the story of the change makers on the ground and creating some evergreen content so they can use it for a long time for fundraising, getting in front of major donors, maybe board members, positioning themselves as an organization that is worthy and most importantly relevant and needs greater resourcing. And then we do Degree Shift, which is our third programmatic work, and that is really around creating campaigns. And so that's where we bring in multiple stakeholders from many different nonprofits. So we might be tackling hunger, right? And we might have food banks that are involved, right? And those that are doing distribution. But we might also have agriculture pieces, right? Those that have farming, sustainable, agriculture practices that teach and educate those how to grow their own foods. We might also have someone in there that's talking about more of like the education piece around nutrition, holistically for whole families. So you might have nonprofits that cover food insecurity lots of different ways. And we build a campaign around food insecurity and tell an entire story about how all of these different organizations can work together to solve the goal. Because we really believe it's going to take all of us working together. There's not any one organization that will solve any of these most critical issues alone.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the impact of what you were talking about in terms of like storytelling and creating a narrative, thinking of it from different angles and kind of bringing it all together. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Any other questions as we come down to the end?
So we've got 2 minutes, did somebody want to ask a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question. Thank you again for answering my question, Stacy. My last question was going to be, beside our roles as interns, what's one way that we can help our local nonprofit organizations?
One of the things that is so overlooked is sharing and engaging online. It's one of the things that I think younger generations get from any other perspective. They see something funny, they share it, they comment, they send it to their sister, their friend, their brother, right? And in the nonprofit world, it is still just as critical. It grows the algorithm, it gets it, feeding it to more people, raising the awareness and raising the profile. So often people are looking for fundraising, obviously, always critically important, right? Volunteering, that's a way that you can give of your time. That's not your resources, but still really, really important. But I would say something that is so constantly overlooked is like engaging with the content. Because that will really, really help raise the profile and get in front of, the person that can make a major gift, right? The person that can maybe invite someone in to do an event with all of their staff and their employees, right? And we can't do that without that collective impact, right? The sharing, the amplifying, if you will. So I think that's a really easy piece. As interns, you're already doing a lot, right? But, figuring out how you can volunteer, maybe in the organizations that you are interning at, saying like, hey, what's the type of social change, social impact work you make? Something like 76% of Gen Z actually will choose a company based on their impacts in both societal and environmental areas. Like, that's astounding, right? Like, that's like something that's being thought about when they're thinking about where they want to work and spend their time for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And so being in these intern opportunities and asking questions about like what these organizations are doing I think will only further cement how important it is for them to be thinking about it and start building this into not just a, extra elective over here, but actually part of their core KPIs.
Great answer. And it's also great for me to plug our social media, guys. All of you should constantly be liking all of our posts. That does, to Stacy's point, that is tremendously important. But Stacy, this was really awesome. You did not disappoint. You even exceeded my expectations. Thank you. And I can't wait for your TED Talk to come out. And Sarima, you've again proven why you're much better at hosting than I ever was. So excellent job. And to the interns, thank you for joining. This actually is the final speaker series event we had. So hopefully you all have gotten a lot out of these. And it doesn't have to end here or the end of your summer. Stay connected to us because we're going to keep putting these speaker series on our recordings on our website. So you might see some in the future, even when you're out of school working, that you're interested in watching. So with that, I am going to stop the recording. Thank you all very much.
And I just want to say thank you again. I really appreciate it. If anyone has questions after this, you can please find me on LinkedIn or my socials. I'm the Stacy Huston on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn and what have you. But happy to answer any more questions that come up. I love the work that Elevate Plus is doing. I think it's really, really, really pivotal, and just grateful to spend some time with all of you today.
Well, thank you so much.